welcome everybody. This is the June Ladies Hunting and Fishing Social Hour. My name is Jennifer Morgan. We are still teleworking, so I come to you from my home in Albuquerque. There is a little bit of news, which is great. We will slowly start integrating back to our offices in July. So that is a good positive move forward. So we're pretty excited about that. So this evening we're going to be talking about early season scouting tips. Several of you were on board with us last month and we just didn't get to this conversation. It was supposed to be split with Trish and then with this, but we had so many questions and so much interaction with her that it kind of warranted the entire session. So we just kind of rolled it to now. So thank you guys for your patience for coming back for this particular topic, if that was what you were kind of wanting last time. So I'm going to pass the baton off to other two ladies assisting me. This evening we're working together as a team to present this information to you and offer these. So Megan, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello everybody, my name is Megan Otero and I'm the Assistant Coordinator for Hunter Education. Been with the department something like 11 years, I think, at this point. Started out as a district officer in the Santa Fe area, and then I moseyed over to the information education side, and now I help with Hunter Ed. So, any questions, we'll get them answered for you. We'll find someone if we don't know.
Thanks, Megan. Okay, Tristana.
Hey everyone, I'm the real Tristana, but I love sharing my identity with such pretty faces, so thank you all. I am based out of the Santa Fe office. I live just outside of Santa Fe up in Glorieta, so I am also at my home, so welcome to my home, I guess I could say, in a very loose fashion, but I'm the department's communications director, so I get to do all of our outreach with social media and with news media and all kinds of different fun programs like that. So welcome, and I'm glad to see so many new faces and so many returning faces. So thank you all for joining us. And I can't wait to hear what ideas you guys have for our next one. We have a few that we'll throw out there, but if you guys think of something that's like, that would be kind of cool, let us know. We'll either refer you to a video that we did previously or add it to our list for future topics. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what we're here for, is for you participating, is if there is a particular topic that you are just really wanting to know more about or that you'd like to brush up on. And if we can't, it's like we bring in guest speakers and to have them, they're the subject matter experts, then they come in and help us with producing some really good educational content for everybody. The other thing too that we kind of switched up when we first started doing these social hours is we had webinar, but now we're in meetings. So if you guys are comfortable and you would like to turn on your video, it makes it feel like we're actually talking to people instead of just a bunch of names. So you're totally welcome to turn on your cameras if you feel comfortable doing so. If you don't, I totally get it, because some of you might be in an environment that is not conducive to your video. So no pressure, but it is kind of nice to actually see people, because we do definitely miss that for sure. And that's what's nice about doing in person, is you actually can see people and you're there in the environment. So, but all right, what I'm going to do, and a few of you have some, it seems like possibly having some connectivity issues. If you are in a household where you have a lot of different devices streaming on the same Wi-Fi or your same internet service, you might need to turn those off, because Zoom does suck a lot of that internet capabilities. And if you're streaming a movie in another room, or you're doing maybe a family member's gaming, or you're doing other things, that does suck that ability from you. Especially when I start screen sharing here in a little bit and I have some video clips I'm going to show, that will also draw down that. So, and can possibly give you issues either with things kind of freezing or getting really sporadic and delayed. So if you do experience some of that, get closer to your router or turn off some of your other devices that might be streaming, and that should improve the quality of the presentation for you. So see. Jennifer Black was asking, does the recording pick up our beautiful faces? I think it does until I start screen sharing, but you also can pick up the view. You can change your view settings on the side of your own devices if you want to see everybody and not just me. So, all right, so I'm going to minimize some stuff. I'm going to get right into some screen sharing. So thumbs up if you see my slide presentation, early season scouting tips. Okay, great. Awesome. I am finally getting this after 1.5 years on the first try. So, well, again, thank you all for your patience for having this rolled over to June session instead of last time, but we beefed it up a little bit more. And so instead of just talking about elk, because I know some of you guys were focusing just on that, we had some feedback from other ladies in our group that actually drew a pronghorn hunt or a mule deer hunt. And so we kind of broadened the scope. So it doesn't really matter sometimes what you're scouting for. A lot of the stuff can intertwine and be used for no matter what species that you might be hunting later on this year. So, all right. So first things first, I'm going to just kind of backtrack before you even get into scouting, because a lot of the times when you're going out on your scouting trip, you're going to be using some of the same exact equipment for your scouting trip as you will be using on your hunt. And sometimes we kind of forget about this. You might have gone out in the field later last year, you come home, you unpack, you kind of get things cleaned up and you throw it back in the attic or the closet or wherever you store it, and it's kind of forgotten about. And then you're lucky and you draw a hunt and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to pull all this stuff out, and you forget to do that gear check. So do your gear check right away, early season. Boots. These are something that people forget about until your hunt. Do that now. Start breaking in any new boots or footwear right now. I've made a mistake by not doing this early on and kind of breaking it in on neighborhood walks or going on short little hikes, and you are going to regret that, especially if you find out that these boots are not comfortable for you, they're just not fitting to your foot, or they're maybe not appropriate for the terrain that you will be hunting later on. If you're really used to just hunting antelope or maybe mule deer down in the southeast corner of the state, and now you've drawn an elk hunt or mule deer now up in the northern part of the state, that terrain is different and it's going to do different things to your feet. So get some boots that are good for your ankles, good foot support, depending upon what type of terrain you're going to be hunting. So don't forget about that, and do that as soon as you can to get that broken in now. Look at your packs. Make sure that the buckles and the straps and everything are still in good working condition. Zippers. I have failed sometimes to check zippers, and then they break in me in the field, and now I'm trying to improvise with what I can find to keep that pack intact while you're out in the field on your hunt. If I would have checked some things during my early season scouting trips, I might not have had some of these problems later on in the field. So take a look at your packs, whether it's a fanny pack, a full frame pack. You might not want to take your frame pack, obviously, if you're just doing some scouting, because you're not going to be packing an animal out, but don't forget about those other packs that you might take with you that you will need if you're going to be hiking far in, maybe to a wilderness area, or you're going to be far away from your vehicle and you have that frame pack. Check everything right now. That way, if you need to replace anything, you have enough time. And that's something right now I think we all might be experiencing due to post-pandemic supply chains, is that I'm having a hard time finding some things that I needed replaced, and they're on back order until August. So start looking at some of those things now, so you're not in a bind when it comes time for your hunt. So those are things that I'm finding out right now. So start pre-planning sooner maybe than you normally would because of some of these post-pandemic issues that we're experiencing with supplies. First aid kits, I think Tristana has mentioned some of this in previous conversations that we've had, but first aid kits, things expire. Medications, so if you're on epinephrine, you have asthma, you have diabetes, and maybe you have an extra set in your pack. Obviously, if you're going to go scouting, make sure that stuff is up to date, because you always need to have your first aid kit on you. So this is a perfect time to pull that out. Check those items before your scouting trip, and then you also will have it before you go on your hunt. Just check all your clothing, make sure it's in good working order, because then if you do need to replace anything, you have enough time to do it before your hunt. Or if you've always antelope hunted and now you're going to be elk hunting, I'm not saying going out and buying a totally different set of camo, but maybe you've only had warm weather hunting gear and now you're going to need to be on a November or an October elk hunt. So make sure you have appropriate clothing. Your optics, I like this picture right here because it gives you a good example of several different types of optics that you might need to be looking at and cleaning up and getting ready. So if you have spotting scopes, make sure your tripods are in good working order. I use a tripod also for when I'm glassing with my binoculars, and sometimes those parts fall apart. And so again, check all that stuff now, because that is also very helpful on your scouting trips as well. And then again, do an equipment check on your firearm, your bow, your muzzleloader, whatever you might be using, and start that process now, because again, I'm also finding out that a lot of our local sporting goods stores, gunsmiths, archery shops are also running into, you know, hey, I'm having trouble getting this type of broadhead. I'm having trouble getting this specific type of arrow shaft. So look at those things and start planning ahead right away. So get fit. Again, if you're always used to hunting in the lowlands and low elevation, and now you're going to be doing a high country type of high elevation hunt, start getting fit. Basically, where and when you're going to hunt is obviously going to dictate maybe your possible exercise regimen. But there have been hunts where I have thought I was in kind of good shape, and the terrain really kicked my behind. Or I didn't do what I knew I should have done beforehand, and I regretted it. I couldn't get into places where I really wanted to because I just wasn't self-committed enough or self-regimented enough. So but find an exercise regimen that's going to work for you. Your friend down the street or your husband or your significant other, they might be super physically fit and say, oh, you need to do this. Well, not every exercise plan works for everybody. And don't be too hard on yourself. Set small goals, set small little milestones. And if that means starting out that you're going to do a half a mile walk every morning or every afternoon to get started, well, great. That's better than just sitting on the couch, because that's not going to get you into any kind of shape for any kind of hunt. But start looking at that. Closer you get to your hunt, start looking at any nutritional needs. A lot of high country, backcountry hikes for elk, mule deer, you're going to expel a lot of calories. Okay, so don't do a lot of things that are not going to help you with that type of regimen. So think about that. Think about your altitude. If you're coming from low levels, maybe down around Roswell, you're in Carlsbad, Las Cruces, and you drew a hunt that is going to be up at 10,000 feet or higher, think of altitude sickness and try to get try every so often during the summer to get yourself at altitude for more than just a day or two. That will help you acclimate to your hunt. Okay, so these are a lot of things that people totally forget about, and then you get there and you're miserable. And that's not any kind of fun. And if anybody's had altitude sickness before, you can get it even at about 8,000 or 9,000 feet, which is where your elk are going to be. It's where your high country mule deer are going to be. So just kind of think about those things. Don't fret if like all of a sudden life happens and you didn't ever make it, but just know that you might be limited sometimes on your first couple of days of your hunt because of altitude or the terrain. But don't beat yourself up on it either, because go and have fun. That's what we do. Hunting is supposed to be fun. Fishing is supposed to be fun. I'm just trying to give you tips to help make your experience more enjoyable, as fun as it can be. Try to mimic some of the conditions and terrain that are in or around your home. You don't have to go out and buy a Stairmaster to get that. And of course, we can be on a Stairmaster all we want, and it's not going to give you the same conditions as if you're actually walking up and down a steep hill or a rocky slope. But try to do your best. Maybe take your pack as you're starting to get more physically fit and put a little bit more weight to it. carry that around your house. If you've got baby in one arm and your backpack on the other, just as long as you can start conditioning your body to carry what you need on your hunt, whether it's hunting elk, or if anybody in the group was lucky to draw a bighorn sheep tag or a Barbary sheep tag, well, that's definitely going to help you with those types of hunts as well. And then just obviously practice shooting with your gear on. That's why I put this picture in the lower corner. Sometimes I've gotten out there and I've got really bulky clothes on now and my bowstring has hit my jacket. So think of those things far ahead of time. And if you know you're going to need to adjust what you do, or you've got just so many clothes on, it's like, I can't even shoot my rifle or my shotgun because I've got too much stuff on. But kind of practice some of those things before you get out in the field. I'm going to show a quick little video that will give you some off-season training tips as well. So thumbs up if you can see video. Okay, great. I'll turn it up too.
Hi everyone, I'm Maddie. Welcome to another Hunters Connect video. Today I'm going to provide some off-season training tips. As fall seasons approach, now is a good time to think about getting your body ready for the rigors of hunting. Long days in the field pursuing game can be extremely taxing, so it's a good idea to use the summer months to do some training. Now you don't have to go overboard and train all day every day, but some exercise and preparation for the season will help you have a more enjoyable hunting experience. Especially if you plan to be hunting out west where mountainous terrain can tax even the most seasoned hunters. The best way to train is to actually head out and scout the area you'll be hunting. This will not only give you exercise and help you get ready physically for the season, but you'll also learn your hunting unit or area. This will increase your chance of success when the season starts. When you head out to scout, consider carrying a backpack with some weight. This will most closely resemble the amount of weight you will be carrying during the season. Also, if you know the area well, you can speed up your hiking pace between known glassing areas. Scouting and exploring is perhaps the most fun way to get ready for the season, so I highly recommend it. If you can't make it outside, consider focusing on both cardio and core strength training. Your legs and core will do most of the work carrying the weight of you and your gear. Running, biking, and stairmasters are all good training exercises for hunting cardio. Do try to mix in some high-intensity sections to your workouts. This can mimic those moments when you have to cover terrain quickly to get in position for a shot. Also, consider practicing using your rifle and bow with an elevated heart rate. This can mean doing some jumping jacks on the range before you shoot. This will help you get familiar with slowing down your breathing after hiking so you can aim accurately and make an ethical shot. In terms of core and leg training, any assortment of exercises can be helpful. Some specific ones include squats, lunges, step-ups, calf raises, sit-ups, and other core exercises. These are just some to get you started. You can find a workout that suits you best from the numerous online fitness blogs or articles. Whatever workout you choose, stick to it. You'll want to train for a few months prior to ensure you're ready to go for the hunting season. Also, consider the importance of nutrition for sustaining your energy for those longer hunting days. While everyone loves a good soda and french fries, you might want to stick to healthier options as you train for your hunt. This will help you get ready for the season and ensure you have the energy needed to hunt hard all day. Finally, if you're planning on hunting in the west or other mountainous terrain, plan accordingly for the elevation of your hunt. Altitude changes can leave you exhausted and tired, as well as be life-threatening if you haven't planned for them. Know the elevation you'll be hunting at and the elevation you are coming from, and give yourself time to acclimate before you start hunting. This can mean spending a few days in a nearby town before your hunt, or staying at a lower elevation base camp a few days before the season starts. Altitude sickness is real, so please take it into account when you're getting ready for the season. Hopefully these tips will get you thinking about doing some training for your hunts. Any training you can do will make your hunting that much more enjoyable come the fall. Instead of being tired, sore, and out of breath, you can focus on finding that animal you're after. Thanks for watching Hunters Connect, and if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to our channel.
All right. So a little bit of redundancy there, but it's pretty important stuff. So of course, now that you guys know what species you've drawn for and what unit that you're going to be hunting in, take a good look at your game unit map, and then get one of the, I'm not saying one is better than the other, but base map, Onyx Hunt, or simply just Google Earth with a good satellite imagery is what we're looking for. And then start concentrating on the actual unit in which you've drawn and start looking at that terrain. And of course, some of the terrain, if it's super, super steep, then your lines are going to be closer together. If they start getting farther and farther apart, that means the terrain is a lot more gradual and a little bit easier to walk on. But look at some of those edge effects, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit, of where that game might be. But these Onyx, it's great because it has an offline mode. They all have an offline mode except for maybe Google Earth. That way, if you are in an area, you can download your entire unit map from these app-based software companies, have it on your phone, and you can use it in offline mode. Just be aware that it does suck quite a bit of your battery, so have an additional charger available, or if you go back to camp and you're at your truck or you're at a hotel or wherever you might be, just make sure you charge it so it's ready to go for you on the next day. A lot of folks still use GPSs, so those are highly effective. Paper maps are really, really good. Megan, you had a really awesome tip that I never even thought about that I'd like for you to share with the group.
Yeah, so we kind of just stumbled upon it. Me and my husband, we go to yard sales or even just the thrift stores and stuff, and he happened to find a map of, it was a Forest Service map, so of one of our national forests, and it's from an area that he likes going to, and so he got it. And when we started looking through it, we noticed that there was several tanks and springs that were on that map, and he's like, I've never even heard of that. So we pulled out a more recent map from that same national forest, and it wasn't on there. So we realized that a lot of these older tanks and springs, they never made it to the newer edition of the map. Maybe because the year they decided to, redo it, maybe they were dry, or maybe the tanks, didn't get as much maintenance, and so they went dry. And he's gone back and looked at some of them, and some of those springs, they've popped back up, or some of those tanks, they're still holding a little bit of water, maybe not as good as they once were, but it was definitely surprising to see that some of that didn't translate over the years to the newer editions. So I would recommend, if you have some of those older maps, take a look at them, compare them to either a newer one or even to some of these software systems, and see if you can find those areas. You might find a hidden spring or hidden tank in there that no one else may know about or forgot about.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you, Megan, so much. And what I like sometimes to use, and I think Tristana has also said this in the past, is taking a paper map, and then you can also verify it. So let's say you're out there in your early season scouting and you're looking at your map, because sometimes I'm still a paper person. I'm still that generation. I like paper, but I really, really like these web-based apps as well, because then you don't have to worry about your map ripping or getting wet. But you can take I'm just gonna use Onyx, for example, and you're like, okay, this map is telling me that there is a spring down in this canyon. And then you can take your Onyx and you can track that where it is, and you can verify that it is or is not there, and you can make a waypoint. And you can do that on a GPS too, make a waypoint on your GPS or your mapping software. And then that way you know exactly how to get back to that when it comes to your hunt time. Or you can verify this tank is no longer there. It's just a dirt tank. It hasn't been filled in decades. And then you can rule it out and focus on another area. So it can definitely be your friend. And the other thing too, a newer map might show that the older ones might not have is newer roads or roads that have been closed. So you can always take those two maps and use them hand in hand, verify it with your Onyx or your base map or Google Earth, and use all of these types of platforms to your advantage to make your scouting trip even more successful and verifying things are or are not there. So it does take a little bit of homework, but some of those scouting trips really can help you verify some of those things as well. The other thing that we want to point out is as you're starting to narrow down in your scouting trips, places to go or not go, or maybe you're just really struggling. You're like, gosh, I've been to all these places and I'm really not having any luck. Call our biologists, call the local game warden. Don't forget to call them. They are really wonderful resources to have at your disposal, that is an email or a phone call away. And you can always tell them, hey, I'm only got a few days for my scouting. Could you help me narrow down maybe where I should go? This is new to me. This is a new area for me, or I'm just not having any luck. Use them as resources. That's what we are here for. We want your hunts to be successful and enjoyable. So anything else, Megan or Tristana, on these things that you have found that good, bad, and different?
I would just reiterate, contacting our officers or our biologists. They're out there year round. So, they have a pretty good sense of where the animals might be or where they've seen. They can give you a pretty good idea because they're out there quite a bit, way more than most of us have the time to be out there. So they could definitely be a good resource.
Yeah. Great, thank you. And I also see from some of the chat comments is that rugged maps. Sometimes the chat, we can't capture that in the video, but rugged maps is a good resource that has been mentioned in the chat. And kind of circling back to getting fit is somebody was saying that actually Kira, thank you. Working out with your mask sometimes could also simulate higher elevation conditions because of that oxygen exchange. So that's a really great tip if you're trying to mimic that. So I think we're all kind of looking forward to no masks, but for all about, but that is a really good positive thing that can help you get ready for that. So thank you so much for that tip. That's really cool. And it looks like Tristana found the website for rugged maps. So if you have the chat available, it's there. So thank you so much. And then Kaylee, what is the best way to reach the local game warden in your unit? I believe on our website, there is a contact list, and Tristana, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you can, if you drew that 6C elk hunt or mule deer hunt, you can get on that contact list, and it should be, you should be able to find an email and a phone number for that officer in that area. But look at your unit map, and then it'll tell you what area, what district that officer is been assigned to. And a lot of those guys will also, or gals, will also help in other areas. So if you call Chama officer or officers, and they also might have somebody that comes to help them, and then they can also send you different resources as well. Forest Service offices, they're a really good resource as well because they have a lot of biologists that are out in the field, and they can be a good resource. Okay, so obviously most of us are probably going to be staying within our unit. If you have an RV or a camper, or maybe you don't have that, but your unit has some lodging available, maybe you're in reserve and you're staying at a local little place or whatever. So there's such a myriad of different places you can stay, but if you are focusing on camping, make sure that during your pre-scouting, and some of this is redundant from a video from a while ago, but it is very important that people forget about, is during your scouting trips, that's when you also want to find out where you can camp. If you are going to be camping in an established campground, start looking at reserving your camp spots now. A lot of folks are running out of places to reserve. So if you're taking a camp trailer, you're taking an RV or a pop-up, or you're wanting to just reserve just a really basic tent camp, start calling those places. And if they take reservations, go ahead and get that locked in now. During your scouting, look at dispersed camping as well. So maybe you don't want to people. You're getting out hunting and you're getting out fishing because you're not really wanting to people. So getting to know your scouting during your scouting time, getting to know your area, it will help you determine some of the best places that, hey, this is where I can reasonably camp or hike into. This is a great little place that I can set my tent. I'm near water, or I've got enough water for a few days. I've got enough food. You don't have to worry about that, but start pinpointing some of those places so you're not really taking a lot of that valuable time out of your hunt days to find that. But sometimes you have to improvise too, and that's totally understandable. So part of getting to know your area is doing some glassing. It's not the most fun, but it also helps you get to know the terrain, especially if you're new. Find a place that's up high, set your optics up. You don't have to have a spotting scope. I don't own a spotting scope, and I'm very effective with having my 10x42s on a steady tripod, okay? So don't think you have to go out and buy a spotting scope to get some effective glassing, and you do not have to have that equipment. But buy the most affordable, good optics that you can. It will make it easier and less eye strain on you as well. But set your binoculars up on a tripod, or sometimes if you don't have that, if you've got walking sticks, set them up so where you can have a nice steady place to sit down and start glassing. Use your pack, the back of your pack too. I've set up on the back of my pack, and I've done grids all across the terrain. These are just some examples of some areas where that you're looking for a good glassing spot. Get up on top, try to have a 360 or 270 view, so you can just start looking at all that terrain. And if you're really not seeing anything, maybe you're there at the wrong time of day, but try to spend not just 30 minutes, try to spend a good amount of time there glassing, because you might miss something. You go back and go, how in the world did I miss that deer? How in the world did I miss that elk not standing there in the broad daylight? Or if it's hot during the day, try to look to see if you can find where they've been bedded in the trees. And so that's going to take some very meticulous searching on your part, but it does pay off, and it has helped me rule out areas where I don't want to spend my time during my hunt and where I want to concentrate on during my hunt. And this does not matter if you're hunting javelina, hunting barberry, hunting elk, or hunting deer. Spend some time glassing, and it also helps you verify on your onX what that terrain really looks like in real life. So you can definitely use some of those things to your advantage.
Hey, Jennifer.
Yes.
I have a quick tip for if you don't have like a tripod and you're just with your binoculars. If you're just sitting down and you just kind of rest your elbows on your knees, and if you're wearing a cap, just with like the fingertips, hold the lid of your cap. That'll help you kind of steady instead of standing there like this, and as you're breathing, you're moving. But if you're just kind of holding on to that lid of your hat, that'll help steady you, even if it's a real quick, like, okay, climb this ridge and we're just going to look real quick and we're not fully setting something up. That'll help you kind of steady yourself to be able to look through those binoculars without your breathing moving you.
Thank you, Megan. I do that all the time, and I didn't even mention it. So thank you so much. That is super, super helpful with arm fatigue and hand fatigue as well. And Laura, thank you so much for adding that tip in there about if you're going to be scouting and you're going to be hunting, that hunting trip plan is imperative, especially if you're going to be by yourself. So we talked about hunting trip plans several social hours ago. I won't spend a lot of time on that, but definitely let somebody know about that when you're out and about. So get to know the habitat. Obviously, if you're always used to hunting antelope and now you got an elk hunt, that's totally different terrain. But we have seen elk out on the flats in the prairie, and I have started to see antelopes up in the Ponderosa Pines. So start looking for those edge effects. Some of these areas are, and look at your hunt area as well. Has there been a recent burn there? Was it last year and now things are emerging and it's nice and green? Concentrate on those areas for your mule deer and for your elk hunts. So you don't want to really hunt maybe an area that looks just like this picture. You see a little bit of grasses, a little bit of forbs just barely starting up, but if it looks like that right now or during your hunt, might not be very conducive to holding a lot of animals to give you an opportunity. If you see an area like this now and you go back to your hunt back in September, October, and you're starting to see a lot of fresh late season forbs and grasses coming in there, that's going to be a really good place to go. So recently burned areas can be good as long as it's not a moonscape. Look for water. This is obviously a very tight commodity right now. We're in a drought, depending upon, well, you go up to Raton, Clayton, Las Vegas right now, it is lush and green and it looks like Ireland right now. It is amazing. But not all of us are going to have that in our hunt areas, or it might look beautiful now, but come time to your hunt in October, November, it might look totally different. But start marking some of these places for water. What types of track are you seeing? That's definitely going to help narrow down, okay, the elk are really using this wallow, they're really using this spring, or if you're mule deer hunting, look at those tracks and find out, okay, all of these are does and fawns. I'm not really seeing any bucks right now. Then try to pinpoint when those bucks are coming in to help, pinpoint and narrow down what those buck behaviors are going to be doing different times of the year. And of course, in early season mule deer hunt, you're going to see bachelor herds of those mule deer, and you're going to see all the does together. But the later you get into the year, that pattern is going to change, and their elevation is also going to change on you as well. So you might see totally different patterns if you're doing some early season scouting in July, and then you get back into your hunt area in October or November, and now you're starting to see the patterns are changing a little bit, and their elevation might be changing. So just be mindful of that. Edges, animals like edges. They like to have the green lush grass, the browse, but they also like to be able to get into the tree line for shade, for cover, and just lounging around. So check those edge areas as well. That will help you. If you have a habitat, you have your hunt area, and there's a lot of different edges going on, that's great. That's some really good places to look for it, because it's going to give you good diversity in the types of animals that you're going to be seeing, instead of just what I call as a monoscape. It's like all spruce and you have nothing else. That's not going to hold as many animals as if you've got a lot of aspen and fir and forbs and brushes and all of that kind of stuff. Look for feeding areas as well. If you see this in your area, you've got some elk going on. If you're in another area and you're really not seeing, basically this is an aspen log that's new, that's fallen, and the elk just eat that up. More in the late season, but if you have some new saplings of aspen coming up, they're going to gnaw on those too. So those are some of the things to look for in the areas. If you're really not seeing a lot of sign, maybe that's not a good place to be during your time, or just make notes of stuff while you're out in the field. Some other things obviously to look for is sign. This is a nice sized bull elk track. You have the dew claws in the back and then the foot there, just to give you reference. Cows, some bigger cows can look like that, but not typically. This is a really nice bull track. Here's some differences in between your deer, your mule deer doe, your pronghorn, and then your mule deer buck. Okay, and of course bucks are going to be a little heavier, so that track set is going to be deeper, and it's going to be showing you those dew claws. Pronghorn do not have dew claws. So if you've got a pronghorn hunt and you're looking at a water hole and you see a bunch of tracks with dew claws, well, you got some mule deer going on there, and not maybe some does. So just a little helpful tip, if you're looking for that, pronghorn do not have those dew claws. And you can see how that pattern on that track is a little bit different. And then we got scat. Obviously your elk is there in that pile. They will have those little pelleted scats as well, and we've talked about that in past social hours. I always recommend getting on Google, looking at different types of poop online, and you can tell the difference between mule deer and elk. Is it a bull? Is it a cow? Is it a buck? Is it a doe? And just really study some of those things before you go on your scouting trips as well, because then maybe you're seeing a lot of elk scat, but that doesn't help you if you've got that buck mule deer tag. But of course, they like to share a lot of the same terrain, unless you're down in hunting desert mule deer. So then you're going to look at the difference between pronghorn scat maybe and mule deer. And for those of you who are also possibly hunting some whitetail in New Mexico as well, obviously the tracks are really hard to tell, but do some of that research on your own at home on Google, and that will definitely help make your scouting trip a little bit more conducive to what you're hunting. Then we're going to look at rubs. A lot of these are elk rubs. Look at the size. I like the picture in the lower right hand corner because it actually shows how big that elk is and how high that rub is on the tree. So if you're seeing a lot of that in your hunting area, you've got a lot of good sized bulls, and that's great for you. Look at how the trees, see how very fresh the one is in the middle. So look at that, especially if you have that September, early October hunt, they're in the rut. And so be looking for a lot of that activity in your hunt area. You know, even the smaller little satellite bulls are going to do a lot of that as well, because they're in competition for the ladies just like everybody else. So be on the lookout for that. Obviously your mule deer, your whitetail rubs are going to be a lot smaller, lower to the ground. So just get in your mindset, how big is the deer, how big is an elk, and if it's way up in a tree like that, you've got a really nice bull hanging out in your hunt area. I don't talk a lot about pronghorn rubs just because they rub on cactus or the yuccas and grass and sagebrush, and it's really hard to see if they've even been there unless they do maybe make a scrape on the ground by that sagebrush, and they'll scrape it, paw at it, and they'll pee in it, and you can be looking for those kind of things if you have a pronghorn hunt out in the prairie. But your mule deer won't really do that. So I've got a quick little video clip. This mostly focuses on whitetail, but there are some really good takeaways for those of you who are mule deer hunting or even elk hunting. So just we'll take a look at this really quick. Maybe. Sorry for the delay.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Hunters Connect. On today's tip, I'm going to be talking about scouting for whitetail deer. I'm going to basically just go over everything we do from start to finish when it comes to scouting. The first thing is get yourself a map of the particular area that you're planning to go scout, whether it's public, private land, doesn't matter, and try to look at aerial imagery of the property. The first thing we're looking for is some type of habitat transition, some type of edge, habitat diversity, and all that means is a change in habitat once you get out there. Today, for example, I'm out in some hardwood type terrain. I've got a lot of oaks and big trees and stuff behind me. What I'm looking for on the map is anywhere where there's an edge. So maybe where the oaks butt up against a CRP field, or where the oaks butt up against a bunch of evergreen trees like cedars or pines. Anywhere along that transition edge, you're going to start to find deer sign, because whitetail deer are creatures of edge, and that's what that means. It's edge habitat. So get a map, look for those habitat transitions and mark all those out, and then plan to go and visit those areas when you get out here and do your boots on the ground scouting. Now once you've got out here to the field, I'm going to talk about deer sign, what to look for there. You've got deer tracks, deer droppings, trails, deer beds, buck rubs, and scrapes. And once you get out here in the field and you start heading towards those edges that you've identified on a map, that's what you're looking for, and you're kind of looking for all of it. Once you get out there to the transition, you're going to start to see deer trails that go right along the edge of the transition. Look in the trails for actual deer tracks. You'll be able to tell if the track is really fresh, and what I like to do is come out and scout after a rain like we're doing today. That way you can see where deer have been in the last 24 to 48 hours since it's rained. After you've looked at enough of them, you'll be able to tell the difference between a fresh track and an old track. Fresh ones will have a real distinct edge where the hooves dug in. Older tracks will look more worn. They'll have curved edges around the edge of the print where water and wind and stuff has slowly started to erode the edge of the track. And also keep in mind that as tracks get older, they actually look bigger because of that reason. As you're scouting the habitat edges, especially if one side is thick and one side is open, if you creep into the thick cover a bit, you're going to start finding deer beds and deer droppings. And deer will constantly bed in these edges. They'll bed in the edge of the thick stuff facing an open area with the wind at their back. And the closer you can set up to these types of locations, the better odds you're going to have at seeing deer during the daylight. As you're getting closer to the bedding area itself within the edge, you're going to find beds, you're going to find deer droppings, you're going to run into more trails, more tracks, and you're even going to see where the deer have browsed on some of the native vegetation in and around that area, because it's where they're spending most of their day. The next thing we're looking for are buck grubs and scrapes, and I'll touch on scrapes first because you can find scrapes outside of deer season. That's a misconception a lot of folks have. Oftentimes scrapes are located in areas where multiple trails cross. They're right along the edges of bedding areas where bucks cruise to check for does before the rut, and they're along the edges of feeding areas as well. But we focus in on scrapes. We like running trail cameras over scrapes in particular because it's a community signpost for a lot of the bucks within the area. And the last thing we'll touch on is buck grubs, and you can find these a lot as well in the off season, you know, especially made from the last fall. They'll still be evident where the buck was rubbing there, but what we're looking for is the direction that the rub was made. On which side of the tree was the rub made? Because what typically happens is a buck will walk up to a tree, he'll rub it, and then he'll continue on past it. Oftentimes they don't walk up there and then completely turn around and go to rubbing the tree. So you can tell which direction the deer was traveling whenever he made that particular rub. And if it's in the fall while they're making these rubs and you're scouting while you're hunting, you're going to want to look for fresh bark shavings and stuff on top of the leaf litter on the ground. That's going to show you how fresh that rub is because the leaves are falling during the fall. If the rub is real slick and there's lots of fresh and somewhat damp bark laying on the ground, good chance that rub was made recently, and you need to pay close attention to that fresh sign, especially if you're hunting. But the rain's starting.
So hopefully that gave you guys some good takeaways for no matter what type of species you're hunting. Again, whitetail are very predominant in most of United States, but you can still take some of those tips and apply it to mule deer. You can apply it to your elk and even if you're, or maybe you guys are hunting coos deer. So next thing that really helps you guys out a lot, especially if you have limited time to get to the woods, are trail cameras. A lot of people kind of get scared about trail cameras because they think, oh my gosh, one, they're an investment. There are some cheaper trail cameras out on the market. Do some Google reviews or some online reviews of some of them. And some of those cheaper ones are actually, we have some stealth cameras that are very old and they were very cheap, and they have actually been the most productive cameras and the most reliable cameras. So don't think you have to spend hundreds of dollars on some of these game cameras to help narrow down maybe where you're going to actually concentrate when it comes time for your hunt. This will definitely help you. At a very minimum, maybe if you can set one for a week or two, sometimes if there's not a lot of time, and Megan and Tristana were talking about this even before we got on board, is sometimes the reality is, hey, I am actually leaving for my hunt the day before my hunt. So sometimes you can set some cameras when you get there at some areas that might look real elky or real, lots of deer activity. Set that camera there for a few days. And if you're not really having any luck, maybe where you are, come back, check those trail cameras and go, man, I wish I would have been here the whole time. But it'll help you be a little bit more productive and not maybe get so frustrated. But if you can buy a couple, they do help quite a bit. Set them along trails, set them on bedding areas, the water, the wallows. It doesn't matter, especially what I really like is the camera up in the this top picture is somebody found an elk bed, and sometimes you wonder, gosh, where did these elk go in the middle of the day? I'm looking through all of this timber and I see elk beds everywhere, but where do they actually, are they here now? Was it in the winter? When was it? So set a camera on some fresh beds and see what time they might frequent that area. A lot of people struggle in the middle of the day when hunting is slow, and they go back to camp. Well, if you know where those beds are and your trail camera is telling you these elk like to go here between X time and X time, you might be able to ambush them. Make sure you check your wind, because that will kill you if you go into a bedding area and that wind is swirly or it's blowing at your back. Not going to help you. But try to get to know where those elk are going to that bedding area, and that if everybody's going back to camp because, oh, it's the heat of the day and I'm not going to be able to find any elk, well, if you did your homework and you know where those elk are bedding at what time, that's so going to help you be hopefully give you an upper edge on elk. So mule deer, not so much, but elk, that will definitely help you. Of course, the biggest thing that you have to be concerned of, no matter where you are get some kind of locking mechanism for your cameras. Sadly, that's just what's happening. People are getting very protective of their hunt area or their cameras, and just if you're going to spend some money on some cameras, they make some cages with cable guards to lock that up. You'll need some tools to make that happen. You'll drill it into the tree. That way nobody can just cut your cable. So if you do have questions about some of those things, feel free to contact me. We've invested in a couple of camera boxes with locks, and they're very helpful. It prevents people from tampering with your stuff, because we've had some unfortunate stuff being stolen. And so it's basically, if somebody's really going to take your stuff, then they're going to bring stuff, but you're 99% of your people, they'll just say, okay, that camera's locked, I'm just going to move on down the road. But they definitely help you to get to know your hunt area. Again, if you don't have a whole lot of time to pre-scout, don't think, well, man, I'm not going to be able to be very successful because I haven't done all this pre-scouting tips that everybody's been telling me about. Don't sell yourself short. If all the time you have is the day before the hunt or the day of the hunt, well, that's okay. You can be just as successful. Just looking at your mapping software. Let me stop this. Oops. Hopefully it stopped on your end. Did it, the screen sharing? Okay, good. But it will help you, and that seems to that is a reality. So don't think that, oh man, I never got out because life happened, or I just don't have the time and I'm not going to be very successful. Don't start thinking about that, because there have been pleasant surprises around every corner when you get out there in the field. And if it doesn't work, well, then you go try another area, or maybe you're in an area and there's a ton of sign, there's tons of tracks, it smells like elk, they're there. Be diligent. It will happen. So it's easy to get super frustrated, especially if you're glassing. I'll kind of circle back to that a little bit. Is you might be pulling that ridge line apart, and you're looking at areas, and you're just like, geez, I have been staring at nothing for an hour. And then all of a sudden, here comes, your herd of elk that have been in the thick timber that just you never ever saw, or the deer. So just be patient. It's super hard. It's really hard. It's hard to be patient sometimes, but sometimes that patience will pay off. And for your glassing tips too, it's going to take a couple hours to look at an area. And of course, if you have a buddy there to help you, you can kind of pick opposite places and just pick that country apart. That way you're not wasting time there if you're just not even seeing anything. Sometimes what I like to do too is, if you can, if you've got to your glassing spot and you're leaving to go to another area, try to make a part of your trek to a new area through that, because you might not have seen anything, but there's a ton of fresh sign. So then don't discount that area. You might not have seen that stuff with your binoculars or your scope, but you walk through the area and like, man, why can't I see them? I've seen them there, but maybe they were there yesterday and they're not there today. So anybody, Tristana or Megan, any other tips? And I want to open the floor up to any questions and address anything that I might not have covered in the chat.
Jen, one thing I'll say for trail cameras is, here in New Mexico, you're not allowed to use any type of camera that can send a signal back and forth. So you can't use any like cellular or Wi-Fi or satellite camera that when it takes the picture or when there's activity on it, it's sending you a signal. You can't use anything like that here in New Mexico. So just be mindful that whatever you use is going to have some kind of recording, like a card or something in it that you have to go and check. You can't have it connected to your phone giving you like real-time images of it.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. That is on page 21 in the Big Game Rules and Information booklet. So if you wanted to read up on that, it is available there. A couple other trail camera tips that I forgot to mention is, if you're going to use them, I recommend trying to do video and picture settings. Of course, if you're going to leave it out for longer than maybe a couple of weeks, that might eat up all your battery, but sometimes it can be very beneficial. But just know that it'll probably eat up quite a bit of your card or your battery. But face it to the north or to the east. Think of where the sun is coming up and coming down. I have wasted really good trail camera setup sometimes with just sun. And sometimes that light reflection will just make it take a bazillion pictures of absolutely nothing. So kind of look at the shadows, kind of look at what's in front of your camera. If you have to trim some stuff away, I've gotten lots of cameras with pictures of just branches, or man, I think it's just taking pictures of that blade of grass that's right there in front of my camera because the wind is hitting it. So just know sometimes shadows will also trigger your camera. I've sifted through thousands of pictures of birds, squirrels, chipmunks, but they're pretty fun kind of camera pictures as well. But just know that sometimes you might get lots of pictures of nothing and you're wondering why. Well, there's some tips to, when you're setting that camera, make sure that there's not a lot of debris where that motion sensor is, or it's super frustrating. And then you have lots of pictures of not what you're after. Also placement. So if you're hunting elk 4 to 6 feet off the ground, something smaller than an elk, your mule deer, your barbary, your antelope, javelina even. So you're going to go more 5 to maybe 3 feet off the ground. So set along those trails or along water. So, and of course there's trail camera etiquette as well. If you come up to a place that has a camera, you can set a camera there too, because you don't really know exactly when that person's hunting. Maybe they got the archery season and you have that November hunt. So it's okay for you to set a camera, but also be mindful. Don't keep walking in front of their camera, because we wouldn't want somebody to be doing that to us as well. So, but don't think, oh, well, somebody's already here. They can be already there, but it could be a totally different animal they're hunting and a totally different time of year. So somebody had asked a question about if putting that bolt in the tree is going to harm that tree. We're not doing enough damage to that tree to harm the life of that particular, whatever you're bolting it to. So, and it's just a very small screw that you're putting it into. It's just enough to where you can't just take that camera right off that tree or whatever it is that you're putting it on. And
hey Jennifer, I'd recommend that whenever you get a trail camera, whenever you buy it, test it, set it up at your house, test the settings on it. You don't want to be out there in the field, pull it out of the box and set it up, because sometimes you may want to change the frequency of when it takes the pictures. Yeah. I know there's been a lot of times where we put it to maybe take too many pictures too quickly, and we filled up a card with just one interaction. But then there's been times where we put too many seconds in between, and we get like half a shot of like an elk coming in, and then because it waited another 5+ seconds, we never got another picture of it, because it literally like came in and left the area that was the motion detectors. So test it out at your house, see what kind of settings work for you as far as frequency of how many pictures it's going to take, and that'll just help you when you get out there. You already know what you're wanting to set up and what you're trying to get from it.
Yeah, perfect. If you have kiddos, they love to help with that. So have them help you set your trail cameras. Or if you're ever wondering, I wonder what my dog does during the middle of the day, set your trail camera up in your backyard. Or you have livestock, maybe you've got cows or horses or whatever, set your trail camera out there and find out exactly, what they're doing or what it takes to trigger some of those different motion or settings. So thanks, Megan. Those are really great tips. Anything that I've missed? Anybody out there that have any specific types of scouting questions? Maybe we didn't cover a specific species. If somebody's got a bear tag, javelina, anything else out there that we might need to touch on before we exit for the evening?
A couple of things to add, and please feel free if you want to raise your hand or unmute yourself. We'd love to hear your voices, or type it into the chat is fine as well. But when you're talking about getting fit, one of the things that I always talk about that I don't think a lot of people think about is the mental side of getting fit. And New Mexico doesn't have these long of hunts, but I was in a hunt a couple of years ago that was a 10-day hunt, and by day 7, my body was physically going, but my brain was just fried. And I had to like step back and figure out how am I going to regroup so that I can mentally get through the next couple of days and like still enjoy what I'm doing. Because it was kind of a once in a lifetime thing. And I didn't want to miss out on being there. But man, I just wanted to curl up and cry because it was so much. There was so much stress on me. And then, you know, on the vice versa, I have a hunt this year that's going to be 2 days, and it's a quick turnaround that you have to mentally have yourself ready for. You know, what's going to happen. It's going to be an action-packed 2 days, and so how am I going to be ready for this? And so just think of that mental side. I'm a competitor with horses, and so I do a lot of meditation, and that's what helps me. But I would recommend looking at some of those other tools or something that might work for you to kind of keep your head as well as your physical shape ready for that hunt. And then I was going to mention in the video he was talking about tracks, and when you're really getting down to you know, is this from today or in the last week, also look for the debris that has fallen. Has the wind blown extra dust in there or blown leaves across the track, especially if it's the fall? And that can kind of tell you know, is this from this morning or overnight, or is this a few days old? And just how recent has that animal been there? So it's one of those things that you just kind of learn after a while, and, you know, watch your tracks. And if you've been in and out of the area, how fast are your tracks filling up with dirt? Because we all know how bad the wind can blow in a lot of New Mexico. So that can happen relatively quickly. But it's a good way to kind of know how soon or how recent that animal's been there.
So we've got some good questions that are in the chat that I want to kind of touch on. As far as for javelina scouting, glassing is your friend. Sometimes water, if it's going to be really hot. Their tracks are going to be very small, kind of like a deer fawn, and they'll be round in nature. And you'll look for rooting. A lot of the times you'll be out and looking and you're like, what are all these little mounds? And it looks weird. Well, it's the javelina rooting into the dirt. And it'll look not like a mole hole, but it'll definitely look like disturbed ground. And so that's where they've been feeding. So, but lots and lots of glassing on javelina. And what's fun about them is you can pretty much hunt them all day. They don't like cold either. So if you've got that January bow tag or early February for your rifle hunts, they like to sleep in and get warm. And so they won't come out into the sun. And so it doesn't do you any good to get out for javelina in February when it's 28 degrees, because those javelina are going to be huddled up until it gets warm. And so, so nice, you get to sleep in and come out when the sun's nice and warm. So some javelina tips there. So end of season hunts, yeah, they can be kind of tricky because those patterns have definitely changed. It can be to your advantage, because if it pushes those elk or those deer down lower because of the weather, then that definitely can concentrate those animals down at lower elevations. But again, if it's a really mild winter, it will keep those animals up really high. So it's really tough on those late season hunts for sure. For your pronghorn scouting, yeah, there could be a lot of checkerboard in there with public and private land. That can go across any species across the board. It's good that you're already getting out, because it's hard to believe that August is right around the corner, and that's when pronghorn season starts. So it's really hard to wrap my head around that, where the summer is going. But if you're doing some of those early season scouting, and you can get in touch with some of those landowners or contact a game warden in that area that might have a good relation with the landowner, that reach out to them, and maybe they'll give you that written permission to access some of their property that might be landlocked to public land hunting. So try that. A lot of glassing with pronghorn as well. If you're looking at them through binoculars, they can probably see you just fine with their plain eyes. So they definitely have the upper hand when it comes to sight. But what's cool about pronghorn is they're very curious, especially when they're in the rut. So you can use that to your advantage. You can use Jeremy, one of our coworkers, he has done this really very successfully by waving a bandana and just sitting there, and sometimes those pronghorn will come within shooting distance. It's pretty cool. So bucks are a lot more curious than does, but they are curious.
I would say, Jennifer, for those end of season, that's another really good time to call the biologists, call the officers. They could probably give you information on where the hunting pressure has been from the previous hunts. So if you're some of those last hunts, it wouldn't hurt to call kind of right, during the beginning of the hunting season and see where they've seen the pressure for some of those early hunts.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. For those of you who have those archery early season elk hunts, contact the game warden in those areas. They're definitely going to be able to help you out, especially on your raka. So definitely reach out to your game wardens. And the other thing that Megan also mentioned, that some of those hunting forums can be very helpful. Maybe like if you want to pinpoint some areas in Unit 45 or a specific area, you can get on some of those forums and use the hunting community to your advantage as well. Sometimes it can be a little not so helpful, but pick and choose. Maybe if somebody is really helpful, you can personal message them and they can say, hey, I did hunt Unit 45 last year. These are some of the areas that you can concentrate on, because maybe they didn't draw it this year. So definitely use some of the hunting community to your advantage as well on social media. That's helped me out a little bit when I've hunted out of state. Some people can actually be very, very kind and very, very helpful and help you out, especially if they are not hunting at that same time. Sometimes they'll just spill the beans and you just never know. So, well, fantastic questions, everybody. Thank you so much for your support and interaction throughout all of these. Yeah.
Someone had a question about open gate. I don't know if anybody wants to talk about it.
We do have an open gate program page on the department's website. It will give you the exact landowners and their contact information and what they're actually signed up for. A lot of them are mostly small game hunting, but it will tell you specifically the unit in which, an area in which they're signed up for, and the species in which you can access. And basically that landowner is just in an agreement with our agency to give you access to their property during certain times of the year for certain species. So take a look at that. And again, if it's for elk or mule deer, and a lot of those landowners are just maybe for turkey or dove or quail. So it will give you species specific on that. And Tristana posted that link for open gate, but it is on our main Game and Fish website, and there's landowners on there. Not very helpful on 21A. I know where you're talking about, but gosh, it is dry, and it's, unless we get some rain, it could be potentially tough. But reach out to the Las Cruces office, ask about the game wardens that are in that area. They might be able to help you out with that particular unit. I am no help at all. So I would be not giving you any good advice. But glassing is a good one to go to for any hunt in any area. If you can look at areas, and instead of walking around aimlessly, you can use the binoculars and use that glass to your advantage, and maybe help you out on that. So Melanie said, who asked about 21A. So even you guys are your own social network and helping. So thank you, Joyce. Yep, she's maybe got some helpful hints for you. So maybe you guys can connect on the outside and help each other out. That's what we're trying to create here for everybody as well, is a social network to help each other out. So if you guys do have a specific area and you want to email us, darn it, I don't have my slide up anymore, but you can contact myself or Megan or Tristana. Send us an email. If we can't help you out personally, we will get you in touch with people with that unit for that species that you have, and hopefully to help you guys become successful and have an enjoyable experience afield. So that's what we're here for. So
someone asked about I think unit 55A. I would get a hold of the Raton area office and see if they can connect you with the officer out that way.
Yeah, perfect.
I can't remember where that was. Somewhere in there I saw that number.
Okay, yeah, I think it was kind of up in the middle of the string. So, and yes, Joanna, we hope this slideshow is going to be available on the website for posting for later on. We're a little backlogged on several of our social hours, but we hope to get caught up so you guys can even use this as a resource to say, gosh, what were we talking about? Or somebody was saying something, and you can kind of refer back to it. So yes, yeah, Uraka. Yeah, so reach out to the Raton office to help you with that. So
Jen, while the conversation's still going, I'm going to launch the poll for potential topics for our next session. If you guys have ideas that are not on this list, please let us know, because there's days where we can't come up with ideas for different topics. So we would like to talk about what you want to hear about. But if you guys have a different idea, type it in. And if not, please let us know if any of these topics sound interesting.
And you can have multiple selections as well, correct?
I hope so. I did it really quick, so I hope that I set those.
And for those of you who are participating in the poll, if you do have ideas that you don't see up there, and maybe you're thinking about other game processing as maybe one of them that Kayleen just put on, you know, let us know about these other topics, and we will do our best to address them to make this continually an educational platform for everybody. It looks like a lot of folks are wanting to know more about sighting in and preparing your equipment. So that always is a good one. And no matter how much I've heard about that kind of stuff, I always learn something new. Somebody always has another tip or something. So we've got upland game and fur bearer hunting as well that are some topics. Yeah, how to use the scope. That can be very technical, and we could probably talk about that during equipment. It would take a big part of it but there are some really good tips out there that will narrow down how to do that, and it's not as complicated as you think, so don't be intimidated by it. Yeah, just dial in. Oh, what does that mean? So really great ideas, everybody. So great. Well, it looks like based on your poll, Tristana, that most people are talking about preparing your equipment. So maybe we can kind of weave in, you know, scopes and sighting in either open sights or scopes, and then potentially maybe another topic for later on in August could be a field dressing.
Yeah,
so field dressing, and then plus we'll be getting into upland season in August as well.
And I'll include, when I send the links out, my email has just frozen. I had all of them captured, so give me a little bit more time to get them to you. But I will send, last fall we did one specifically on field dressing. And maybe we can expand when we talk on that and talk about some of the different cuts of meat and the processing side as well. And do that into a different session than what we did before.
Yeah, definitely. And just so you guys aren't intimidated by field dressing is pretty much the same all across the board. If you're doing a basic, just getting the insides out, it doesn't matter if you're doing a javelina, a deer, an elk, it's all roughly the same. It's just the size of the animal that differs. And then one of the techniques that I've actually started really liking is the gutless method. That's really nice, especially if you have to pack that elk out. So yeah, fantastic, everybody. We really appreciate you all. Great interactions. I hope you found this helpful. And next social hour will be July 20th, same time, same station. So be looking for the invite from us to register for that one. And let your friends, family know, everybody in your community, you know, spread the word that we have this available. And that's what's so cool about virtual environments, is that we can outreach to folks just everywhere and not just have one specific place. So
if you want, real quick, I managed to put together just a real quick contact for us, if you want me to post that for them.
Yes, please, Megan.
Where did it go?
And the YouTube, it's if you go on the main Game and Fish website and you click on the YouTube icon, you can click there and it'll take you to the Game and Fish YouTube page directly. As of right now, we don't know the exact link that we're going to have it available on. And like I said, we're just a little backlogged on previous ones. But yeah, if you just go to the main Game and Fish website, click on the YouTube icon, it will take you directly to our Game and Fish YouTube page.
Sorry, it froze on me.
Gotta love Zoom.
I love Zoom.
Thanks, Tristana. Tristana put the link in the chat. And our contact information is up there. Thank you so much for that. Give you guys a second to capture that information in case you need it for later reference. But again, we are always here to answer your questions. We're only an email or a phone call away, so please take advantage of us. And if we can't answer it, like Tristana and Megan said, we will get you in touch with either the office or the staff member that can help you and point you in the right direction. So, but thank you all so very much. We've had a really great evening. Really appreciate all of your support and participation. And with that, I guess we can call it an evening and everybody can go eat dinner and enjoy your families and some downtime. So thank you, ladies. Everybody have a great night. Look forward to next time.